Right, so now we're going to start off studying harmonizing the major scale. It's a three-part lesson, and this takes us right into the heart of guitar music theory. Now, at this stage, I want to give you something of a health warning. When you're studying music theory, it's very easy to come to a grinding halt halfway through a lesson because really you're taking in so much purely conceptual information that you end up with a head full of half-processed ideas that basically makes you feel like your head's exploding, and it all gets a bit boring and tedious. Now, we don't want that to happen, so I'm going to give you two tips that really help solve this problem. In this lesson, as in most theory lessons, you will get diagrams come up on the screen, and each time we do, I'm going to suggest that you pause the video, grab a piece of paper and a pen or pencil and just copy down the information from the diagram. The actual copy, you can throw it away afterwards. The actual copy itself is irrelevant, but it's the process, the mental process you have to go through in order to copy that down that matters. It's a bit like digesting your food. It's mental digestion, and that helps relieve the process of sort of stacking up loads of half-processed ideas. Similarly, when you see me pick up the guitar to demonstrate something, a bit of scale or whatever, make sure you pick up your guitar and copy or find the notes that I'm using and grab some of your own understanding of exactly what I'm doing there. This again helps you process the ideas and doesn't leave you full of half-learnt bits and pieces. So please take that seriously. I almost guarantee that if you don't do that, you'll get about halfway through this lesson and give up on it because it's just too boring and tedious. Okay, let's launch into the main part of the lesson then. Ever wondered how to work out which chords work best together when you're writing a song? What exactly do we mean by certain chords belonging to a particular key? How is it that some guitarists seem so easily to be able to change a tune from one key to another when required? These are all the questions that you should be able to answer once you've worked your way through this series of lessons on harmonizing the major scale. The major scale lies right at the heart of music theory. And for the sake of keeping things simple, in this series of lessons, we're going to work using the C major scale. Because the key of C major has no sharps and no flats. This means we're not adding complexity to a subject that's already plenty complex enough. When we harmonise a scale, we use the notes from the scale to form a series of chords. We can then say that these chords belong to the same key as the scale belongs to. For example, if I take the scale of C major, so I'll play it here in open position: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So that's the C major scale. And here's the series of harmonised chords based on that scale: C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, C major. You'll probably be familiar with all those chords except the B diminished. It's a rare chord. That's made like this: first finger on the A string at the 2nd fret, second finger on the D string at the 3rd fret, third finger on the B string at the 3rd fret, pinky on the G string at the 4th fret. That's B diminished. Okay, so that series again: C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major. You can tell which one of those I play the least. The most immediate practical application of this knowledge is in songwriting. If you've written a melody based on a particular scale, then by knowing which chords come from that scale, you can quite quickly harmonise the melody and produce a chord sequence that will work very nicely to back it. Or you can work the other way around. You can put a nice chord sequence together, and knowing that those chords come from a particular scale, you can then quickly find a melody based on that scale. Let's give you a quick demonstration of this. So I've got my C major scale. Let's make up a quick instant melody based on it. I'm going to play it a couple of times just to fix it. That'll do, that's close enough. So then we can sort of work out from our palette of chords which ones are going to sort of work behind that melody. Da 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 da, ba 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 ba. The note is A, so possibly I could use an A minor chord there. Ba 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 ba. Or possibly pick up on the fact that we go from A to G there and use the G major chord instead. Ba, 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 ba. That kind of works a bit better for me. Ba, 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 ba. What was our next note? Da, ba, 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 ba. So that's an F. Ba, 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 ba. Okay, one of many possibilities, but you can hear immediately that those chords fit that little melody. Or we could have worked the other way round. We could have started with some nice chords from the key of G, key of C. Let's try going D minor, G, F, C, quite like that. And then I can find out from the major scale, I can find a melody that fits with the chords. Again, often this is easier to do by singing rather than playing, especially because I can't play the melody and the chords at the same time. Dum, da, 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 so up at the end there, doesn't it? Da, 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 da. Okay. So you notice that the notes from the melody that I'm finding are nearly always the notes, one of the notes from the chord itself. All that knowledge comes from what we're about to investigate. So that's a quick glimpse at the end result. Knowledge of which chords go with which scale, which scale goes with which chords. Now let's look at the process by which we work this out. We start with the notes of the scale written out in standard notation. Notice that a scale belongs to the horizontal or melodic dimension of music. By that we mean the dimension of music that deals with the relationship between notes heard one after another. Now don't worry, this is going to make more sense in a minute or two. To harmonise a scale, we take each note of the scale and pile up a couple more notes on top of it, like this. So what we're doing with this process is we're building up in the vertical or harmonic dimension of music. This is the dimension that deals with the relationship of two or more notes heard simultaneously. Now let's give a brief demonstration of these two different dimensions that we're talking about. When I play the C major scale, I'm playing note 1 of the scale, followed by note 2, D, note 3, E. So for example, we can then name the interval on this scale between note 1, between the C and the E. We refer to that as a third because it's the distance between note 1 and note 3. But the term third can have two different meanings. A melodic third is this. The two notes 1 and 3 played one after another. C and then E. So that's a melodic third. But I can also play those two notes together. C and E together sound very harmonious. And we call that a harmonic third. So a third simply means the distance between notes 1 and 3. But it can either be expressed melodically, and we call that the horizontal dimension, or harmonically in the vertical dimension. Hope that makes a bit more sense now. Now notice exactly how the notes are piled up. Reading from the left, we started with the note C and then placed the notes E and G above it. So this is the first critical difference between working in the world of scales, the horizontal dimension, and the world of chords, the vertical dimension. Scales tend to move one step at a time, and we're talking here in terms of the musical alphabet: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Whereas chords leapfrog. They go C, miss out the D, E, miss out the F, G. So there is generally more space between notes in chords than between notes in scales. Now we continue this process adding notes on top of each scale note in accordance with this leapfrog principle of hopping over the next note in the scale. You can see in standard notation this works pretty neatly. If the bottom, or root note as it's called, of the chord is on a line on the stave, the next two notes in the chord are also on lines, on the next two lines above. If the root note is on a space, you can see on the next chord, the D chord based on D, if the root note is on a space on the stave, then the next two notes are also on spaces, on the next two spaces. So that's step one. Take each note of the scale and add two extra notes to it to build a three-note chord, using the leapfrog principle to add those notes. Now the next step is to name these notes. And here's the first of two important rules. The notes must be named in accordance with the key signature of the scale we are harmonizing, the scale that we're working with in the melodic dimension. That's nice and easy in this case because we're using the key of C, which, as we said, has no sharps and no flats. So the notes in the first chord we name as C, E and G. The next chord has D, F, A. Then the next chord E, G, B. Then we've got F, A, C. Moving on to the top four chords, we have G, B, D. Then A, C, E. B, D, F. And finally we come full circle back to C, E, G. So we've named all the notes in accordance with the key signature that we're using in the melodic dimension, in the horizontal dimension, the key of C, nice and simple, no sharps, no flats. Now we come to the trickier bit. The next step of the process is to analyse each chord relative to the major key signature of the root note of that chord. Don't worry if that all sounds a bit Greek to you at this point in time. It's going to make more sense as we do it. So let's start with the first chord. So we built this first chord on the root note of C. That means we analyse the chord by writing out the C major scale. You can see we've done that on the diagram. We've written out C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Then we've written out the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 under the scale notes. Next, we've highlighted with the red boxes the notes of our chord, C, E, G. Finally, we take note of which steps of the scale these three notes fall on. In this case, it's 1, 3 and 5. So by analyse, we simply mean to work out which numbered notes are used to make up our chord. So in this first example, the first chord in the key is made up of notes numbered 1, 3, 5. Now, if you followed our lesson on triad formulas, you'll know that 1, 3, 5 is the formula for a major triad. Triad, by the way, simply means three-note chord. So the first chord in the key of C major is the C major chord. Let's move on to the next chord. This has the notes D, F and A, of which D is the root note, the one at the bottom. This means that we have to analyse the chord against the scale of D major. Now, if you've just recently followed our lessons on how to work out key signatures using the circles of fourths and fifths, then you can probably fast forward through this next bit and skip it. But for anyone who's the least bit unsure about the subject of key signatures, let's just give you a quick reminder. So let's hop over to the whiteboard a minute. First step, we write out the letters D, E, F, G, A, B, C and D, like that. D to D through the musical alphabet. Then I'm going to write numbers under each letter so we keep track of where we are in the scale. So the D note will be number 1, E will be 2, F will be 3 and so on. Now, the next thing we have to always remember to do is to work out whether this key is one that uses sharps in its key signature or one that uses flats. Now, this is something you simply have to know, but it goes like this. If we take all the natural notes, A, B, C, D, E, F and G in the musical alphabet, C is an odd one out because, as we've gone on and on about, it has no sharps and no flats. The other odd one out in this series is F, which has one flat in its key signature. All the other natural keys, A, B, D, E and G, are sharp keys. They have sharps in their key signature. So the key of D is one of the natural keys that has sharps in its key signature. The only two exceptions are C and F. All the other key signatures are dead easy to work out in that respect, because obviously if you've got C sharp, you know it's got sharps in its key signature. You never mix sharps and flats. If you've got E flat, you know it must have flats in its key signature because you never mix sharps and flats. So it's only the natural keys that sometimes catch you out, and specifically the key of F is the one that most people trip up over. All the other natural keys, other than F and C, are sharp keys. So D is a sharp key, and to work out the key signature of a sharp key, we use the circle of fifths, and we use the mnemonic Father Charles goes down and enters battle. Let's just remind us of that. Father Charles goes down and enters battle. Whoops, never mind. Okay, that'll do. So how do we apply this? We get back to our key here and we go F for father, put a sharp next to that. C for Charles, put a sharp next to that. And we stop there because the rule with this mnemonic is that you stop at the 7th note. That's just cast in iron. When you're applying Father Charles, you stop at note 7. So Father, Charles, stop. So there we go. That's the key of D major. It's got two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. Back to the main lesson. So the notes in the chord we want to analyse are D, F and A, and we want to analyse them against the major scale of the root note D. And we've just worked out that the key of D major has two sharps, F and C. So now we number the scale notes 1 to 8, and then we highlight the chord notes D, F and A, and then look at where they lie on the scale. And this time we find something a bit odd. D is clearly note number 1 in the scale of D major, and A is note number 5. But where is F in the scale, in the key of D? It's actually one semitone, or half note, below the 3rd note of the scale. The 3rd note is F sharp. We're looking for F natural. So we analyse this note as the flatted 3rd. Now this can cause a lot of confusion, so let's just go over that one more time. We're looking for the position of the note F in the scale of D major. The key of D major has two sharps, F and C. So the 3rd note of the scale is F sharp. the note F that we're looking for is actually just below this note, this third note of the scale. So we refer to it as the flatted third. So the formula for this chord comes out as 1, flat 3, 5. Again, from the triads lesson, we know that this formula produces a minor triad. So the second chord in the key of C is D minor. So far then, we've got the chord of C major, followed by the chord of D minor. And already you can hear how nice those two chords work together and sound together. Very nice, easy progression. Okay, so let's look at our next chord. We have the notes E, G and B. We write out the E major scale because E is the root note. Using Father Charles Goes Down tells us that there are 4 sharps in this key, F, C, G and D. Remember, we stop at D because it's the 7th note of the scale. Father Charles Goes Down. We come to D, which is the 7th note of the scale of E, so we stop the Father Charles process at that point. We then number the notes 1 to 8 and look at where our 3 chord notes find themselves in this scale. Once again we get the result 1, flat 3 and 5. Remember, we're looking for the note G natural, and the third note in the key of E major is G sharp. G natural is a semitone or half step below this third note, so we label that flatted third. The formula 1 flat 3 5 once again produces for us a minor triad, so the third chord in the key of C major is E minor. On to the next one. Our root note for the 4th chord in the key of C is F. So we write out the letters F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. But we're careful to remember that F is the only natural key that uses flats in its key signature. So instead of using the rules for the circle of fifths to find the sharps, we use the rules from the circle of fourths to find the flats. The monomic for the circle of fourths is the reverse one. Battle ends and down goes Charles' father. And the second rule says we stop at note 4. So remember, in the circle of fifths for sharp keys we use Father Charles Goes Down and enters battle, and we stop at note 7. But for the flat keys we use the circle of fourths, battle ends and down goes Charles' father, and we stop at note 4. So in this case, in the key of F, we don't get too far around the monomic. Battle gives us a B flat, and then we notice we're already at note 4, so that's it. The key of F major has 1 flat, B flat. Now, numbering the scale notes 1 to 8, and then highlighting the chord notes F, A, C, shows up the fact that we've got the formula 1, 3, 5. So this is a straightforward major chord. So we're halfway through harmonizing this scale, and so far we have C major, D minor, E minor, F major. Again, you can hear how nicely those chords go together. We're going to take a break there and give you a bit of a chance to absorb all this information. I strongly suggest taking your pencil and paper and going back over what we've just done on your own. Start by writing out the scale, then add notes to each of the scale notes leapfrog fashion to build the chords, then analyse each chord against the major scale of the root note of the chord. Give that a try, and when you're happy to move on, join us for the next lesson where we'll go through the remaining 4 steps of the scale. And then we'll look briefly at some of the applications of this. We'll look at the end result of what we've got, and we'll look at how we apply that to writing songs or to working out the chord sequences of songs other people have written. So I look forward to joining you in part 2.